You ever heard of an HOA horror story? Well, buckle up, because this one takes the cake. It all started with a woman named Karen. Yeah, the kind of Karen you're thinking of. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was the president of our HOA. And let me tell you, she ruled this community like a dictator in a pastel sweater set. At first, it was just little things. A warning letter here, a petty complaint there. I figured it was just her way of showing she was in charge. But then, it got personal. One day I found a bright orange notice slapped on my front door. Violation, porch light too bright. Seriously, my porch light. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was just a one-time thing. But nope, the next week, another letter. Trash bins placed incorrectly. Come on. They were exactly where the city instructed. Then a third one, this time about my lawn. Apparently my grass wasn't up to HOA standards. Keep in mind, my yard looked just like everyone else's, but somehow I was the only one getting these notices. It was clear Karen had a target on my back. I tried to reason with her. I even attended an HOA meeting to understand what was going on, but the moment I raised my concerns, Karen shut me down. Rules are rules, she said with that fake, condescending smile. And just like that, the other board members nodded along, as if they were hypnotized by her authority. Then, things took a turn for the worse. One evening, I came home to find an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a letter that made my blood boil. Final notice, you are in violation of multiple HOA regulations. Failure to comply will result in eviction from the community. Hold on. Eviction? From my own house? I laughed at first, thinking it had to be some kind of mistake. But Karen wasn't joking. She had filed an official notice citing repeat violations as grounds for removal from my own property. That's when I realized this wasn't just about power. This was personal, and if Karen wanted a fight, she was about to get one. You ever have one of those moments where everything just clicks? Like 1 second you're fuming mad, ready to fight, and then, boom, you realize you've been holding the winning hand the entire time? That was me. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, had been harassing me for weeks. Violation notices, threats of eviction, she was relentless. But what she didn't know was that she was messing with the wrong homeowner, because, you see, Karen didn't own her house, I did. That's right. The very woman trying to kick me out of the neighborhood was renting her house, and the person she was renting from? Me. I'd bought the property a while back as a rental investment, and I rarely dealt with the tenants directly. I had a property management company handle all of that. So I never put two and two together. But once I did, oh, you better believe I checked every single detail of her lease agreement. And guess what? Karen, the almighty ruler of the HOA, had been breaking her rental contract. Violations stacked up like a tower of dominoes just waiting to fall. Unauthorized alterations to the property. Check. Multiple complaints from neighbors. Oh, definitely. And the best one, harassing the property owner. Her time was up, but I wasn't going to just kick her out over email. No. That was too easy. I wanted to see her face when she realized who she had been messing with, so I took my time. I printed out the official lease termination letter. I made sure every legal detail was in place. And then, with the confidence of a man about to serve the most satisfying dish of cold, hard karma, I walked straight up to Karen's front door. She opened it with that same smug expression she always had, probably thinking I was there to beg for mercy over some made-up HOA. Violation, can I help you? She sneered. I smiled. Actually, yes. And with that, I handed her the letter. She skimmed through it, her expression shifting from annoyance to confusion to full-blown panic. This is a mistake, she stammered. Nope, I said, crossing my arms. You're being evicted from my house. Silence. For the first time ever, Karen was speechless. And let me tell you, it was beautiful. If you thought Karen was going to pack her bags and leave quietly, you don't know Karen. The moment she realized she was being evicted from my house, she did what every entitled HOA dictator does. She fought back. And of course she didn't. Right fair. The next morning, I woke up to an email from the HOA board. The subject line, illegal eviction warning. I actually laughed. Illegal? This was my property. I had every legal right to terminate the lease, especially with the number of violations Karen had stacked up. But Karen? She thought her HOA power extended beyond the law. The email, obviously written by her, warned that my attempts to remove a community member without HOA approval could result in fines, legal action, and further consequences. Yeah, no HOAs can make rules about fence colors and lawn heights, sure, but they don't get to control private rental agreements, and they sure as hell don't override actual landlord-tenant laws. I was ready to call my lawyer just in case, but before I even had the chance, Karen upped the ante. She called the cops on me, that's right. She called the police. An hour later, 2 officers knocked on my door. I could already picture Karen watching from behind her curtains, probably thinking was about to get arrested or something. The officers were polite but firm. "We got a report of an illegal eviction happening here," one of them said. I smiled. "Oh, I figured she might try that. Give me a second." I went inside, grabbed my file folder and handed them everything. The lease agreement, the violation, notices, and the legally binding termination letter. The officers took their time reviewing the documents, and then one of them let out a small chuckle. "Well," he said, looking at his partner, "this is pretty clear-cut." He turned back to me. "You're well within your rights. She has to leave." And just like that, Karen's last attempt to hold onto power crumbled. The officers walked over to her house, my house, and knocked on the door. I couldn't hear their entire conversation, but I caught the best part. "Ma'am, the HOA has no legal authority over landlord-tenant agreements. You can't override state law. If you don't comply with the eviction notice, you could face legal consequences." Boom. Checkmate. Karen tried to argue, of course, but for the first time in her life, it didn't matter. She wasn't in control. The law was. She had lost. And the best part, she knew it. The day had finally come. Eviction day. I had given Karen every legal notice, every warning, every chance to leave peacefully. But of course, she refused to go quietly. When I arrived that morning, I expected to see moving trucks, or at least some sign that she had packed her things. Instead, the house looked exactly the same. No boxes, no suitcases, nothing. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Still nothing. She was ignoring me. Fine. That's why I had backup. Minutes later, the cops pulled up just as planned. I had already gone through all the proper legal steps, so this was the final stage, a full eviction enforced by law. The officers knocked. Silence. Then, a scream from inside. "This is illegal. I'm not leaving." "Oh, here we go." The officers exchanged glances, clearly not in the mood for this nonsense. One of them knocked again, louder this time. "Ma'am, you need to open the door. You were given plenty of notice." More screaming, more stomping. Then, bam! Something shattered inside. I tensed. What the hell was that? Before anyone could react, the door flew open, and there stood Karen, red-faced, wild-eyed, and shaking with rage. "You can't do this," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "This is my house. I am the HOA president." One of the officers sighed. "No, ma'am, this is his house. You're a tenant. And now you're trespassing." Karen lost it. She turned back inside and started wrecking the place. Smash! A lamp flew across the room, shattering against the wall. Crack! She knocked a chair over and started kicking it apart. She grabbed picture frames, dishes, anything within reach, and hurled them to the floor, breaking everything in sight. The officers rushed in. "Ma'am, stop! This is destruction of property." Karen didn't care. She grabbed a chair and threw it toward one of the officers. It missed, but barely. That was it. The cops grabbed her, restrained her, and forced her toward the door as she kicked, screamed, and tried to claw her way back inside. "You can't do this to me," she screeched. "I'm calling my lawyer. I'm suing all of you. Ma'am," one of the officers cut her off. "His patience gone. You're leaving now." And just like that, it was over. The great and powerful HOA tyrant was escorted out, her reign officially dead. She stood on the sidewalk, panting, disheveled, and completely defeated. Her entire empire, all of her power, gone. And what did she have left? Just one small suitcase, one. That's all she had managed to pack before her entire world collapsed. And as she stood there, seething with rage, she locked eyes with me one last time. "You'll regret this," she spat. I smiled. "No, Karen, you will." Then I turned, walked inside my house, and shut the door. The morning after Karen's legendary meltdown, the neighborhood was peaceful. No more passive-aggressive violation notices. No more ridiculous rules. No more Karen. For the first time in a long time, I stepped outside and took a deep breath of fresh, drama-free air. But of course the story wasn't over just yet. Later that day I got an email from the HOA board. Subject: Urgent. HOA Leadership Vacancy. Oh, this should be good. I opened it up and sure enough, Karen was officially gone. The board had removed her from her position, citing multiple breaches of conduct, abuse of power, and failure to uphold HOA standards. Translation: she got herself fired, but that wasn't the best part. The email wasn't just an update, it was an invitation. They wanted me to take Karen's spot as HOA president. I actually laughed out loud. These were the same people who stood by while Karen terrorized me, who nodded along while she abused her authority, who never lifted a finger, until now, when they were desperate for a replacement. Now they wanted me to be in charge. Yeah. "No thanks." I sent a short reply. "Appreciate the offer, but I must decline. I prefer to enjoy my home without unnecessary drama." Short, sweet, and hopefully a wake-up call for the HOA to stop enabling power-hungry lunatics like Karen in the future. I shut my laptop and leaned back in my chair, smiling to myself. Karen had spent years acting like she was untouchable, like she was the queen of the neighborhood, and now she had nothing, no home, no power, no control. And that thought, it was the most satisfying victory of all. Life lessons from the HOA story. The power of justice and patience. Life is full of people like Karen, those who misuse authority, create unnecessary rules, and believe they are untouchable. But if this story teaches us anything, it's that power, built on intimidation, never lasts. Karen ruled with fear, but in the end, she lost everything because she forgot a simple truth. Respect matters more than control. No title, no position, no set of rules can protect someone who treats others poorly. Eventually, their own actions catch up with them. This story also highlights the power of patience and persistence. The homeowner could have reacted with anger, but instead he chose to handle things legally and strategically. Too often, people let emotions take over when faced with injustice, but true strength lies in staying calm, gathering facts, and letting the system work in your favor. For older generations, this is a reminder that wisdom outweighs impulsiveness. Experience teaches us that rushing into conflict rarely leads to victory. Instead, careful planning, knowing your rights, and trusting in the long game will always yield the best results. And perhaps the most important lesson? Bad people will eventually face consequences. It may not happen overnight, but arrogance, greed, and power-hungry behavior always lead to downfall. The world has a way of balancing itself, and those who mistreat others often end up alone, just like Karen. So, when faced with unfairness, take a step back. Stay patient. Stand your ground. Justice always comes if you give it time.